Ik ben van opleiding ingenieur.
I am an electronic engineer by training. I was working at the University of Antwerp in the Center for Care Technology, focusing on adapting products for disabled people. A friend and I had a fun idea one evening when we were going out to create an interactive urinal. So we created a place to pee, a urinal equipped with sensors to detect in which direction the person was peeing, so they could play games on a screen. That was fun, but we soon ran into problems because the ceramic urinal got dirty and the sensor was incapable of properly detecting the direction. So purely out of love for technology, we started to look for a solution.
There is een basistechnologie waar dat
There was a basic technology that we needed to develop into a useful product. So we wrote a technological grant proposal and submitted it to a government grant agency. This was a first validation, given that some experts were going to have a look at our submission and determine whether it was a viable idea. If approved, it would also allow for the necessary financial support to develop this basic technology into an effective product. So we worked almost 2 years perfecting the technology and making it into a product.
We got this idea to start up a business almost by accident. Both Jan and I saw the potential to do some wonderful things with it. We wrote this proposal for a government grant, which we got, and we subsequently carried out. That's really how this company started. We first started to develop a sensor for flushing a urinal, which was better than anything on the market. Better means that there are no false flushes, so we are water saving. It is also resistant to vandalism. So we focused on developing a better automatic flushing system for urinals and bring that to market. What this means is that our sensor can detect how dirty the urinal is and how much water is needed to flush. So we developed a sensor which could be attached to an existing urinal. We are the only ones that can detect when an individual starts and stops peeing. This is already a better product than the typical infrared product, which can only detect whether it is somebody in front and when he leaves, so it flushes. But our sensor detects whether the urinal has been used and how dirty it is, adapting the required water to flush. We started this company based on an idea and developed our own technology, so we do our own research and development. As you can see, we have our own lab where we test all electronics and ceramics. We design our own prints and layouts, but we outsource the production of the sensors. We are not a production company, so we subcontract the production to a trusted manufacturing company in Belgium, close to home. The production is designed that way that our sensors are molded into a resin, which is excellent against any liquids, but also an easy way to protect the product from copying.
In terms of sourcing, we have our own production right around the corner, so to speak. We don't do this ourselves. I don't see us doing this ourselves ever. This is not our strong suit. There are other companies that have far better expertise in this regard. We have a business model that is focused on developing the technology and researching and designing the product. But production is not something we will ever do. But we do want to keep this close to home. But obviously, the commercialization and internationalization still had to start. Look, if we want to internationalize, how can we best go about this? Before we started our renewed international adventure, we first decided to profile our company on one of the largest industry trade fairs and see what business would come our way. I am convinced that any company looking to internationalize has to attend trade fairs. You cannot do them all because they're quite expensive, but nothing compares to trade fairs in terms of the efficiency in facilitating internationalization.
There is really a big trade fair in our sector, ISH, in Frankfurt, every 2 years. That is a high mass of sanitary ware.
This is an extremely important tool in promoting your company to possible partners and customers. First, it is extremely efficient. Everybody in your industry will visit. Second, you also meet the right people there. Anybody, that is somebody in your industry, will be there. Third, companies want to meet and find out who they will be dealing with. The chances of companies contacting you are remote, but on a trade fair, you can show the world who you are and what you are capable of. You show them references. You show them what you are working on. We are present here as a company to show what we are good at. These days, you can have a nice website and good social media, but on a trade fair, you can get your message across. In a short period of time, you can have a conversation which clarifies much more than any mail, call, or website can realize. As such, trade fairs are extremely important for a company and its internationalization. The regions where we are currently active have all grown organically from our presence on international trade fairs. The mere fact that we posted that we were going to be present on the ISH trade fair got us the attention of agents and distributors that were already following us. But also their competitors and other distributors take notice and ask to collaborate. And that's how our business started. We built up locally, and then, through our contacts, we started to internationalize into Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. That is how we started to grow in Europe.
And the other markets that we did not know, that are too far away for us to know, they also came calling.
We are currently supplying a number of larger sanitary ware producers, whereby we are selling our own branded products. We often select the smaller player in the market, who has more to gain from our collaboration. This is more important than picking the largest distributor or dealer, who might have competing products and might not be as interested in growing our business. We basically follow where our products take us, given that sales in this phase of our development is more important than strategically deciding on our next international market. We don't do that quite yet. We basically have a different entry mode approach in Asia, for instance, as compared to Europe, where we are based and where we started. In Europe, we operate along the value chain, from selling to producers, selling through distributors, and selling services with our products. That is basically not realistic in Asia because of differences in legislation, languages, culture, and so on. Commercially, there are few barriers. That is the good thing about our industry. In Asia, we have chosen to cooperate with strong manufacturing partners who can take care of the differences in language, culture, rules, and regulations, because that is their core business. They can benefit from our innovative technology and European quality image. That is very important in Asia. So that is how you can create a win-win situation. But we cannot take control of the distribution or the service side of this story. That is why we need a producer that can take care of this and any local laws and norms.
Sanitary ware is a real cultural thing. Our technology works perfectly on European models, but in China, for instance, we are dealing with completely different models, so we have to adapt our sensors a bit. The culture of sanitary products is quite specific. In the US, for instance, you have a completely different way of flushing than in Europe. They have different norms, so you cannot just copy a urinal from Europe because norms prevent that. So now we are making a urinal in China to export to the US through a big American player. In the US, an American company buys from an American company, so you have to go through a local partner. In Europe, this really doesn't matter. In China, they prefer European products and technology because it is an important selling point. That's an advantage. In the US, you can't do that. Sanitary products are very culturally determined, so we buy dependent upon the local market requirements. The ceramics for the US are made in China, while the European products are sourced in Turkey, Spain, or Hungary.
What struck me in Asia was the preference for new technology. Here in Europe, that is less the case. Companies are much more cautious and reluctant to try new things. In Asia, they have a more hands-on approach and will embrace new technology. They will try new things. If it doesn't work, they will cast it aside. But if it does, they will take it up much more quickly.
Everybody wants to be an innovator in Europe, but nobody wants to risk burning their fingers. While in China, they say, let's go, we'll try, period. Chinese companies also look at you more like a partner to grow together. If it doesn't work, I am sure they will drop you, but if it does, they are in it for the long run.
The biggest cultural differences are not at the level of the product, but mainly in doing business. A toilet in Asia or in the US, there might be a few differences in terms of norms, like more water, different sizes and so on. You have to change a few things, but that's just adapting the engineering to fulfill standards. The biggest challenge is the culture of doing business. How do you deal with contract negotiations and mutual expectations? Chinese, for instance, they prefer to do business with friends and family. So they want to get to know you and take you out eating and drinking. They want to bond before doing business together. Here in Europe, there is also a lot of eating, but it is less a sign of hospitality and friendship. If you look at the negotiations, it is difficult to get an answer in Asia. In Europe, that is straightforward. You put forward a price, you get a straight answer, whether your price is on target or not, and by how much. In China, you will not get any reply. There's no information as to why there is a no-go. That is much more conjecture, guessing what the problem is. So doing business that way is much harder. If you want to export to Asia as a European company, it is therefore best to be in direct contact with your customer, as it is extremely important that they can contact you directly. If you start exporting, there are a lot of rules and regulations to deal with. And there is also always a consultant that claims to be an expert. What you basically need is a company that can guarantee proper service in terms of transport, and I can explain the process, requirements, and conditions to you in detail. These companies are typically smaller and locally based companies, rather than a global consultant that can give you a lot of general advice and presentations, but that do not add any value at the end of the day. In that respect, Flanders Investment and Trade delivers an excellent service in support of your export from Belgium, but also has good local people in place that are easily accessible and can give you useful local advice.